Will you tell us a little bit about like how you guys are, if you're ready to talk about that, like what you're looking at? I would imagine your sort of business model involves some form of targeting and just advertising based on the type of people who are using it.
Right. I mean, the things we were talking about before were just the types of groups that existed.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we found out recently, which is pretty amazing, was that 10% of all the groups on GroupMe are family groups, which is pretty incredible. And the top two names in our entire system are actually mom and dad, which were amazing stats. And we thought like at first, okay, that's a bunch of like kids running around with their smartphones and adding their parents to groups. And yes, that happens, but a lot of times it's a lot of dads and moms adding their kids to groups saying, hey, now I kind of have a collar on you and I'm going to know where you are all the time. Kind of a neat thing. But when we do think about us and monetizing long term, what we really want to be doing is helping groups of people get together in real life and enabling them to make decisions better. And what that really means is showing them deals of fun things they can do in their area. And a lot of what we're going to be doing is probably using the context of the types of groups these are. So if they're families, maybe it's family dinner stuff or discounted tickets to Six Flags. If it's college students or young adults or coworkers, maybe it's this is where I can grab a drink after work or after class, that kind of thing. But that's stuff we can do within the app too. It's not like we're waiting 5 years.
Yeah, right. And what if, you guys obviously must do tons of targeting. That must be a big part of what you're doing is targeted stuff.
Yeah. So targeting is kind of interesting because there's obviously the ads application for targeting, right? So in Mevo today, the way we primarily monetize, like I said, we reach 40% of the US internet audience with our bar installed on sites. It's about 8,000 sites that have a bar on it. And it's got an ad on there that's great for brands. And so, we go to Coke, we go to Pepsi, we say, hey, we have a bunch of users that you can reach, and, we'll help you make an impression on those users. It's very positive. Brands want, obviously, to target the demographics that would be interested in their brand. So we've worked on kind of 3 fundamental forms of targeting. This is as relates to ads. I want to get to product targeting in a second, though. So it's, let's target by demographic, right? Makes sense, age, gender, location. Let's target by interest, right? So since Mevo lives out there on the open web and we're on something like Dilbert, if you're at Dilbert, you're probably interested in comics, right? If you're at, I don't know, New Republic, then you're probably interested in their kind of news. Or if you're on, TMZ, you're probably interested in celebrity gossip, right? So it says something about what you're interested in. And then another thing we've begun to look at is psychographics. We actually acquired a company called Mindset Media in New York to look at, hey, is someone creative or is someone intellectual? And that has really big implications on, take like Audi versus Mercedes versus Ford, right? Like, who buys those kinds of cars? Well, for Audi versus Mercedes or probably, Ford versus Chrysler, I'll bet you the demographic, like the straight demographic looks the same, but the psychographic looks very different. So like an Audi buyer is more likely to be creative. Mercedes buyer is more likely to have kind of a superior element to them. So that's a great way to target on the ad side. Now, what I think is actually more interesting maybe to everybody in the room is how can we use targeting to make a product better, right? So let's think about product for a second. In today's world, the web is not particularly personalized, right? It's kind of like, I go to CNN.com, Jerry goes to CNN.com, we get the same experience. That probably makes no sense at all, right? Like we probably are both interested in tech, but you're probably interested in, I don't know, one thing, I'm interested in another thing. Why are we getting the same experience? And so I think what's going to become incredibly interesting in the web, and this is probably easier to do in web than app, but whatever, is to begin to truly personalize the web based on the individual and give them better product experiences based on what we know about them. So instead of this kind of notion of, ooh, I don't want this network to know about me because they're kind of nefariously targeting me. What if you created product that users actually wanted you to know more about them because you delivered them such a better product experience? So that kind of targeting, I think, is going to come. I think it's going to be based on people's interests, right? Because your interests are an incredibly strong signal of how you would want the web personalized to yourself. And I think, we're 6 months to a year away from some really interesting stuff in that space.
Another important
factor in that shift, because I agree as well as apps are kind of going to move away, whether it's an HTML5 type interface or some new web interface that looks like an app, but you get better analytics within that more open environment you do today inside of an application. Because they are so siloed, it's very hard to understand a unique user in each one of those app environments. And so your ability to kind of monetize against them, whether it's for advertising or other types of models, becomes a lot more difficult. So an open environment with security can then create, transitions across these different, what would look like an application.
So you guys just to infer that you can do better targeting in an open environment than you can through.
Right, you think about where the web is, right? You have much better targeting on the web because you can kind of persistently track a user, whether they go to any website or whatever the case may be. That's a big challenge today in mobile. One thing we spoke about yesterday on the panel is that ability to bring more relevant content, more relevant offers, more relevant ads, and that's a challenge today. So if we can open that up, get away from the app concept, remove the silos, you start to look like with the web looks like in some ways, maybe better.
Are you guys able? You are able to do some sort of targeting in apps right now, right? Based on location and anything else, or is that it?
That's why we've picked location. Obviously, we're a location company. Location is something we can get very easily, but obviously, we don't have the same level of demographic targeting or contextual search targeting. It's still very spotty, and I think now that we've all seen the privacy challenges that have recent come down, I think the industry has to make a shift. So things like this can help, but obviously, then there needs to be some other ways to pull that other targeting content.